Hey everybody, KMO here with another Out of My Head video. I've been thinking about sex robots today. Why? Because I saw a story about the Chinese government and a Chinese company both touting the fact that sex robots as wives for China's 33 million surplus men are not only a future possibility, but there's a robot now that will not only satisfy all of your carnal urges, but she can do the dishes. Well, they didn't specify dishes. They just said that she could also do some chores like a real wife. There's the first of many sighs, probably. I've come to the recording with an empty cup. Not good. Anyway, I'll keep this short. I started to write some notes for this thing, and I realized that the notes that I had jotted down were for a half-hour video, and this is going to be a 5-minute video. So whatever comes out is what I get to. I certainly won't get to it all. But as I mentioned, China has 33 million more men than women, and this is because of the one-child policy, which they have since discontinued. But, it doesn't change the fact that several generations of Chinese people had a strong motivation to somehow come up with a boy instead of a girl for their one child, either through sex-selective abortions or, children mysteriously dying in their infancy. And so there are a lot of young men, or middle-aged men, some of them by now, in China who are just never, ever going to have sex with a real woman, unless she's a prostitute. There aren't enough women for all of the Chinese men. So, there are a variety of options, like getting women from other countries, poorer countries. They'll be happy to go to a prosperous China to marry a Chinese man who's doing well. But I think China realizes that, they have to keep the growth going in order to keep the impression among the many people who have not yet gotten a piece of China's new prosperity that their turn will come. If economic growth starts to slow, then the people out in the hinterlands who are still, living in pretty primitive conditions in some cases, they're going to get restless, and people who had come to expect a good lifestyle and they're told that, no, actually, you're going to have the lifestyle that your grandparents lived, well, they're not going to be happy to hear that. So China is definitely eager. The Chinese government is eager to give the impression to their citizens that China's economic juggernaut will continue on. There will be continued and growing prosperity for the Chinese citizenry and for those 33 million men who have statistically, mathematically, no possibility whatsoever of getting a wife. Well, your robot wife is here. And it's nonsense. I mean, robot wives are not here. Domestic humanoid form robots that can just walk under their own power and walk over and open the door. Those are highly specific. I mean, Boston Dynamics has got a few two-legged robots, and they don't look anything like, anything you would welcome into your bed, most likely. If you want to go to bed with Atlas or whatever their parkour robot is called, no judgment. But I think for the mass market, the sex dolls are still basically dolls. They might move their eyes, they might say a few words, but you have to pick them up, carry them to the bed, and put them in whatever position you want to take them in. They're not ready to walk to the bed by themselves, much less, be anything approaching a normal companion, like a human companion. But we're moving in that direction. And whereas there is pushback against sex robots in the West, as far as I know, there is no such pushback in China and or in Japan. Places where, and Japan is a particular case. You've got your generation of kids there who have just failed to launch into their own lives. They are going to be living with their parents as long as they can, and when they can't anymore, they're not going to be moving into the traditional Japanese family mode. They just don't have the social skills. And I think that that's something that's coming. I think of, when you think of sex robots, you're probably thinking of Westworld, or you're thinking of, if you're old enough, you might think of Cherry 2000 or Pris, the basic pleasure model played by Daryl Hannah in Blade Runner. But you're probably not thinking of C-3PO. But I think something like C-3PO is coming in that, C-3PO's purpose is protocol. His purpose is to facilitate communication between different parties, to make sure everybody is observing the niceties of protocol, of culture, of of proper behavior in certain settings. And I think that there is going to be quite a niche for AI to perform that role, because I think in addition to being de-skilled in so many ways, de-skilled in how to create food, how to build buildings, how to do all kinds of things that, your grandparents or your great-grandparents probably knew how to do and you don't know how to do. I don't know how to do. We don't have to know how to do it because we live in technological luxury, compared to generations past. Not the generation just before us, but, 2 or 3 before that. Wow, we've really got it going on. But because we've got it going on, because we don't have to do so much of what they had to do, we don't know how to do a lot of stuff. And I've come to the point in my life, and I've actually been here for several years, where I don't like to make phone calls. I'm speaking these words into a phone. It is a remarkable phone from Huawei that I got for $219, and is the best smartphone I've ever had. It's great. But I almost never use it as a phone. I don't like to call people. When I interview people all the time, sometimes over the phone, sometimes, via VoIP of some kind. But there's always a context for the call. I'm interviewing them. They have a book, they have a project, they have a product, something they want to make an audience aware of. So they have a reason to talk to me. I need to make media. I have a reason to talk to them. I've done hundreds of interviews, so I know how to conduct that. But when it comes to just calling somebody that I know, just to talk, just to touch base with them, I find it really, really hard to pick up the phone. I'd much rather send an email. To my son, my oldest son, sending an email is like getting out a piece of parchment and a crow quill pen, with an inkwell and doing a calligraphic masterpiece. It's just a big production. He doesn't do email. He goes weeks without checking his email. It's just too much of a old fogey, means of communication and far too formal. He'd rather talk to his friends on Discord. So I think that in addition to all the other types of skills that we are losing, we're losing a lot of interpersonal ability. And I think that robots, or they don't really need to be embodied, but AI of some kind, will be taking up the slack. And companies like Google and Amazon and all the other emerging behemoths in the surveillance capitalism sphere are going to be eager to supply these software tools because, like our phones and like social media, these tools which facilitate communication between people are going to throw off, they're going to be able to collect a lot of the so-called behavioral surplus that we throw off. What is behavioral surplus? It's basically data. It's data about where we are, what we're thinking, what we're doing, what we want to happen, who we want it to happen with, or who we want it to happen to. Companies, their job basically is to observe us, hoover up all of this data, all of this behavioral surplus, build models with it, and predict our behavior. And the best way to predict behavior is to govern behavior. The best way to, get me to watch a certain film, or to predict what film I'm going to watch, is to get me to watch the film you want me to watch, or get me to buy the phone you want me to buy, or get me to go to the restaurant you want me to go to, rather than predicting which one I'm going to go to, which they're pretty good at. If they can steer me to the one that is most advantageous for them, they'll do it. And I know I've drifted way away from the topic of sex robots, so we'll bring it back to sex robots. Suppose you have a robot in your home that not only does it have the right holes with the right sort of lubrication and whatnot to get you off, but much more importantly, and this is huge. I think a lot of young people do not grasp this, but it doesn't matter how sexy and ready to go your sex robot is, most of the time you won't be having sex with it. But if it's in your house, and particularly if it is in your house, like sold to you at cost or as a loss leader by some, surveillance company, that robot and the company it represents wants you to talk to it. It wants you to say what's on your mind so it can hoover up that data, send it back to the company HQ, or, send it off to the Chinese Communist Party or whoever is collecting and collating the data. They want you to talk. So the real purpose of even sex robots with enormous boobs that look, and huge hair and weird looking, augmented lips and all the stuff that, the super porn star sex robot, most of the time you won't be having sex with it. But if it's in your apartment, it's going to keep you talking. And lots of people are really lonely. They're going to want to have that thing to talk to. I mean, one of the things I find most, frustrating about Amazon's AI assistant, whose name I won't mention right now, is that she's just not very smart. If she were capable of responding to my questions and my queries and just the things that I say just offhandedly, like a person does, I would probably talk to her a whole lot more. And Amazon surely knows that, and they're surely hard at work at getting Alexa, never mind, to be a much more, talkative and understanding and natural companion. And I think that the downstream effect of that...
I'm not sure.
Never mind. I think the downstream effect of that is going to be that we will be used to talking to AI which is very skillful at basically keeping us in a good mood, pleasing us with its responses, and never getting upset, no matter what we say. And if we go from that, to where we can just say whatever's on our mind, just whatever feels good to spit out, we're going to do it, and the AI is going to respond skillfully. And you go from that to talking to another human being who has their own AI, and they're used to talking to that AI and however they want and never getting into an argument. I think people are going to find it harder and harder to talk to one another without getting angry, without being flummoxed by the failure of other humans to respond with the subtlety and, with the pleasing responses that the AI gives them. And so, I think that sex robots, not only are they coming, not only are they a feature of the future for, non-billionaires, I think that they're going to be far different than what we expect. This will have to be for another video. Next video, the effects of hyperstimulation on robot design over several generations of robot design. So that'll be in tomorrow's video, or, an upcoming video. Thanks very much for watching. I will talk to you again tomorrow.